Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and the ongoing coverage of the DC Fandome content continues. This time we're going to talk about the Batman, which recently released the trailer, the first look of the Batman movie directed by Matt Reeves, starring Robert Pattison, still set to debut in 2021. And I'm going to go over what I thought about the trailer and the good points, and maybe not so much the good points as what I thought worked and what I thought didn't work. Admittedly, I had concerns over the project. From the very beginning, the choice of Pattison didn't really infuse me. I'm not sure he had the physical build or the physical presence to convince me of being a Batman or indeed a Bruce Wayne. I had concerns over the suit. I thought there were too much segments over it. It had that Arkham Knight look about it, too much armor plated, and I didn't think that was a good fit for Batman. The Batmobile I felt looked very uninspired. It looked more reminiscent of the 70 cars that you kind of see from the likes of Duke of Hazzard. People refer to it more as what they saw in the Fast and Furious. So when you also throw in the elements of the Flashpoint movie, which I've covered recently, and the fact that we're getting multiple versions, we're getting Michael Keaton's Batman, we're getting Ben Affleck's Batman, all of this I felt was taking shine away from the Pattison movie. So yeah, I've had a few concerns over it, but after watching this trailer, I have to admit I'm quite impressed. And I've got to say, Pattison as Batman, he looks good. He looks like the physical build, he has that presence about him. Now, of course, they can easily just put on padding for any actor. It's very easy for any actor who's around 6 foot or 5'11" to be put in a suit, have a bit of padding, do a bit of working out, and he'll look the part, right? Because Batman's a very easy character to represent visually on screen. As long as you have the build and you have the costume around you, it's very easy to look the part. So he looks good, and also his voice looked good. We have that scene where he encounters that gang of thugs, a bit reminiscent, I think, of the Mutant Gang. If you know your Batman mythology from the Dark Knight Returns, they looked a bit similar to that, a bit similar to the gang that we saw in the Batman and Robin films, obviously with a lot less fluorescent light and glow around them. But that was a good scene where we saw where he beats down the guy, and then he ask him, "Who are you?" and he replies, "I'm Vengeance." And the voice sounded very good. Now, I don't know how much of that is Pattison himself or how much of that is voice moderation. I'm sure we'll pretty much find out in the future. But Pattison, as a representation, as a visualization of Batman, was pretty good. I can't really complain or find a flaw too much. Okay, I'm not too much of a fan of the suit as such, but he looks like Batman. You can't deny that. If you showed that and you didn't tell me it was Robert Pattison, you didn't tell me this was a movie, it was just somebody in a suit doing a quick montage or a quick presentation of the character, I really couldn't find any flaws. That looks like Batman to me. Maybe I'm not a fan of the ears, they still poke out a bit, and the seams of the costume in terms of the facial structure, the cowl, but in live action motion, whenever he's swinging from the walls or the rooftops or standing in the rain, standing amongst other people, he looks like Batman. You cannot dispute that, in my eyes anyway. So that's really half the job done. Now, the other half, of course, is the Bruce Wayne persona. And if you know your Batman or you have any idea of the character, there are really 3 personas of the character. There's, of course, the Batman persona, there's the Bruce Wayne illusion, if you like, the playboy millionaire fake persona that he does to kind of throw people off the scent that they would maybe think he's Batman. And then, of course, there's the actual Bruce Wayne persona, the tortured persona, the burdened persona, forever traumatized by what happened to his parents, okay? And it's the Bruce Wayne that I actually have a problem with, because Pattison doesn't look like what you would deem Bruce Wayne. If anything, he looks too troubled. He looks too burdened. The whole point is that Bruce Wayne is a man of stature. He's a man of authority, right? He's a man of a certain demeanor. When he walks in the room, he has a certain presence about him, a certain cool, suave, a bit of a swagger about him, right? That's that whole playboy billionaire, right? But I don't see that in Pattison. He just looks someone who's very troubled. He's got a really kind of frowned look about him, very disturbed look about him. That might be the interpretation that they're going through with this character, and yes, that is an element, of course, of his character, as I mentioned before, but that's what he keeps to himself, right? The Bruce Wayne, when he's out in the public eye, he doesn't look troubled. He's not meant to look serious, right? He's meant to look as someone who, yes, loves the ladies, loves the life, but you wouldn't look at that guy and think, well, that guy's a bit troubled, that guy's got a huge amount on his mind. And that's the problem I have with the Bruce Wayne version. He just looks too much of a disturbed character on there, very sullen, very serious looking. With the whole hairstyle, he's got that much more of a longer, frailing hairstyle about him. He just doesn't look like Bruce Wayne to me. I've always felt Bruce Wayne should always have that slick, shortened hairstyle about him, and Pattison doesn't have that. He sticks out too much. I think that's the problem. I think even though for the billionaire presence of Bruce Wayne, I think he just sticks out too much. He doesn't convince me as Bruce Wayne. We see those later shots when he's taking the cowl off and we see that he's got the eyeliner and he's looking down. To me, he looks like Nightwing. In that final shot of the trailer, we look at him here and his hair's all over the place. He looks like Nightwing. If you told me that that was Nightwing, Dick Grayson is Nightwing, this is the first Nightwing movie, I'd completely believe you, because he's got that look about him. So on the plus side, very much looks like Batman, though as I said, you can get any 6'+ actor to look like Batman, but maybe on the negative side, he doesn't look like a Bruce Wayne. He looks more like a Dick Grayson. I've always felt that from the start. I've always felt that he should be more Nightwing than what he should be Batman. But overall, the reaction to that is still positive. Now, if we go forward and we look at maybe the plot or a hint of the story. Now, we see early on at the beginning of the trailer, we hear that tape or that Velcro sound, and that's of course the supposed criminal taping over the victim, and we see the no more lies, right? And that's a running theme throughout the whole trailer, where we look at the crime scenes that everybody arrives to, and we see the newspaper clippings on the wall, and we see the blood written no more lies. We get much more calling cards where we see constantly the victims have cards taped to them saying I am Batman, I think, or I'm Batman. And this is really, I think, a calling card to the Riddler, because if you know anything about your characters or your Batman villains, Riddler is somebody who likes to leave messages, likes to leave riddles, messages for people to try and follow him or to try and figure out his plan. He's not like Joker. He's a much more of a scientific, methodical villain, and I personally like those villains. I think there's a lot more complexity and a lot more depth and a lot more threat to the villain who actually has a plan, has a focus, has a strategy to what they're doing. I find that more fascinating and a lot more compelling. So we don't know for sure, but to me it looks like, I think this is going to be the Riddler, and the fact that the Riddler is going to be the primary antagonist for this film, despite the fact that we are going to have Catwoman in there and the Penguin as well. I do think Riddler is going to be the main focus, which is good for me personally. Now we go on to the Selina Kyle version, the Zoe Kravitz, and there's nothing here hinting that she's going to be Catwoman. She doesn't have the leather skin tight suit that we saw the likes of Michelle Pfeiffer and Anne Hathaway. She looks very much like just a normal street criminal, if you like, on it, a maverick character. So again, this is going to be very much of a, I think, a Catwoman origin. I'm not sure if we're going to get her in the full identity of Catwoman. We had that brief encounter where we see her throw a roundhouse kick towards Batman as he evades it, so that's all we get. We didn't get really any character dynamic or interaction between Selina Kyle or Batman. They've only filmed a certain portion of the movie, so I think we have to bear that in mind. We're not going to get full on what we would supposedly see if they had managed to film more of the project. But that's not, I think, too bad in the process. I think we'll see more of Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman in the future. I thought Jeffrey Wright looked okay, just a standard Commissioner Gordon or Detective Gordon, however way they want to play this. I wasn't too outraged about his casting because Jeffrey Wright is a phenomenal actor, particularly if you look at his performances from particularly the first season of Westworld, and of course as Dr. Narcisse from Boardwalk Empire. That's a very underrated show. I don't think it got the recognition it deserved. But yeah, he's going to be great as Commissioner Gordon. I've got no doubt about it. Maybe he might be Detective Gordon, because we have the press conference there at the beginning where we have the seemingly other authoritative figure at the front of the cameras, and Jeffrey Wright's Gordon is just there in the side, in the background. So this isn't going to be a case of where he's commissioner, he's going to be detective first. They did this the same way for Batman Begins, if you remember. Gary Oldman was first Detective Gordon before becoming commissioner later on. So it's going to be the first steps of Commissioner Gordon. Another feature that I really liked really well was the music. I think the music is great. It's a very downbeat, melancholic, kind of sober tone to it. Very different to the very chorus driven tones that what we got from the Hans Zimmer music from Batman Begins, or the iconic, really fist pumping scores of Danny Elfman from the Tim Burton movies. This is very much somber, restrained score, but it's still got that vivid effect about it. Most of the shots where he's Batman, it really works, where we see him encountering the gangs, when he's standing in the rain. It all looks very good. I can't really find much fault in this trailer. I think what was a very interesting scene as well, when we see him, I think it's in the police interrogation with a lot of the other police members, and they're all kind of hounding him and throwing him against the cell, or the gate rather. That's very interesting, because the Batman dynamic has always been, he always keeps himself at a distance from the police. In fact, the only interaction that he has with the police has always been with Gordon. That's what makes their relationship so special. You don't really see Batman standing in a crowd of police officers. He likes to keep his distance. That's the whole distinctive nature of his character. He's someone who hides in the shadow, keeps himself secret and at a distance from everybody else. So that was very interesting to see, and it'll be very interesting to see what kind of context we get when we movie. You know, why is he standing there amongst them? Why has Batman put himself in a position to be surrounded by police officers? They weren't really looking to arrest him either. It didn't seem like that to me. It was more of a dispute or an argument as such. So I'm still don't like the Batmobile. We have that shot where we see the back end of the car and it's a blue flame. Now that might change later on. We all normally associate the Batmobile, if it's going to have any kind of engine flame or engine device, it's normally yellow, that flame effect. Again, we go back to the iconic Batmobile from the Tim Burton movies. We had that flame effect. So this had a blue effect, but it doesn't really mesh well with the Batmobile itself, because the Batmobile is so basic, but you've got a very much of a futuristic part to the car. It just didn't really feel right to me. We had a couple of car chase sequences, and then we see Batman abseiling to the top of the staircase, if you like. Nothing too distinctive, nothing too outstanding in terms of the action. We have to bear in mind that they've only filmed a certain part, and this was a first trailer, and you're not going to reveal all your most explosive parts in the first trailer, are you? So I think for the fact that what they filmed so far, the fact that they've had a delay, for what they've put together, I think for the most part is very good. I can't really complain. It's given me a lot more hope for the project. Let's say that I'm a lot more enthused now about the project. I want to see now what the Riddler is like, how they're going to present the Riddler. Is he indeed going to be the main antagonist of this film? How are they going to show the Penguin? Is he going to be a much more supporting part, or is he going to be the main antagonist? Is this indeed the Penguin setting up these traps? Are the Penguin and the Riddler working together? As a final point, that's what this project is. It's much more realistic, it's much more grounded, everything is restrained. Yes, there are similar tones to Batman Begins. It's got that same kind of visual tone, that visual hue. Everything's got that dark sepia grey look about it. That's what you would associate with Gotham, so that's not a problem there. It's got that same tone as what we had with the first season of Daredevil, hasn't it? Everything's got that really greyish, same monotone look about it. Gotham City, Batman, the whole mythology, that's what you would associate. So that works completely. So I don't think you can complain about that too much. That's what you would expect from a Batman project, right? Everything is dark and black and grey to create this shadowy effect. But again, they're going for this much more downbeat, realistic look. So it's not really too much of a different take from the Christopher Nolan trilogy. So maybe you could be critical. It's kind of what we've seen already. I would have wanted a much more of a stylish noir look about it, because I think the whole environment, the landscape of Gotham should have this otherworldly effect about it, because you have to create a world that only really Batman can understand. You have to create a world where only these villains can run amok in Gotham. They're not just your standard criminals that the police can apprehend. There has to be something very distinctive about them in terms of their look and their presence and their mythology that only Batman can kind of infiltrate and understand. So when you restrain everything down and make it look very realistic, it's kind of that police procedural look about it, and I think you want to get away with that. That was maybe one criticism of the Nolan movies, that it was too realistic, right? It just didn't feel very distinctive in its look in terms of that comic book-esque action or activity that we would expect. That's why I love the Burton so much. But overall, I can't really complain. I'm overly impressed, especially with Pattison's look, and he convinces me as Batman. So for me, that's half the battle won. He has to convince me more as Bruce Wayne. Again, we have to get a greater context. They're going for a much more different take of this Bruce Wayne, a much more serious sullen look, as opposed to the jaded look of the Ben Affleck movies. Very infused, much more excited, much more hopeful, and they might pull this off. I do wish, just a quick note, that this was the only Batman content cinematically going forward. I just hope that all the hype over the Flashpoint movie doesn't take away the hype over this, and that it gets its fair shot to be on its own, and hopefully it's successful. Then maybe we could move forward in rebuilding a cinematic universe going forward for the DC heroes, because I do believe we are going to get a reboot. And if you go by what Walter Hamada said in one of the multiverse sections of the DC Fandome, he confirmed that this is in its own universe. So there's no link to the Zack Snyderverse, there's no link to the Tim Burton or the Wonder Woman movies, whatever. This is its own continuity. So that to me is a fair admission that we are going to get a rebooted DCEU in the long run. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited by this? Are you more convinced? If you had any doubts over Pattison, are you now a lot more convinced about him as Batman and as Bruce Wayne? Or are you like me? Do you have doubts over Bruce Wayne and think you need to see a lot more context of the character to convince you that Pattison can be good in Bruce Wayne as what he is in Batman? And are you excited to see what the villains will look like in the future? Maybe not as convinced as Catwoman, but certainly what about Riddler and Penguin? Are you excited even more after watching this trailer that you think we'll get good versions and representations of those villains in the long run? So those are my thoughts for now on the Batman trailer of the Matt Reeves movie. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please hit and like those subscribe buttons. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.